So my name is Gabriel Gasque, and I am head of outreach at protocols.io. And before we begin, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I have a background in experimental neuroscience. So I did a PhD and then I did some postdoctoral training. So I do have experience in the research lab. Before joining protocols.io, however, I was an editor in the flagship journal of the Public Library of Science plus Biology, and I was there for 9 years. So I consider myself a scientist as well as an advocate for open science, experimental reproducibility, and research integrity. As I mentioned before, the presentation is being recorded, and I will share the recording with all registered participants. This is mostly a live demo, so there are very few slides. And before we jump into the presentation itself, some housekeeping information. So this is an advanced webinar. So in case you are not an advanced user for protocols.io, I just want to point out that the platform we think is very intuitive. And the best way to familiarize yourself with the many different functionalities is to just log in and play around. However, we also have a series of resources that you can browse for more information. And these resources can be found at protocols.io/webinars. So if you go to the website, you will see the list of upcoming webinars. We also have some recorded tutorials. We also have past webinars recorded that are on the platform. And in the last URL, it's a link to request a one-to-one demo. So if you click that link, you will see a calendar. You can sign up for a slot, and you will have the opportunity to talk with one of us privately. You can share your screen. We can share our screen and discuss very interactively any question that you might have about the platform. So as I mentioned before, this is not an introduction to protocols.io. So we will use this opportunity to highlight some of the features that, even though the platform is intuitive, we think these features might take you a couple of months before you encounter them and learn how to use them, but could be very useful from the start. So I'm going to be focusing on some of those things from the editor that are not necessarily instantly discoverable. So this is the agenda. So as I mentioned before, we will dig in the editor. We'll also visit the file manager and discuss the differences between copy and fork and how to create protocol collections, and about sharing your work with colleagues, either from the workspace or protocol by protocol. And so let's start with the live demo. And what you see right now, I'm already logged in to the platform. And what you see right now is my account. So for those who are not familiar, this is the organization of protocols.io. To the left, you can see all the workspaces to which I belong. Some of these workspaces were created by me, so I am the administrator. In some other workspaces, I'm just a member. Somebody else created them and invited me as a member. Some of the workspaces are public, meaning that they are searchable, and some of the workspaces are private. So we are going to be using my own private workspace for this demo. It is not searchable, so you cannot find it if you go to the search engine. Each workspace has a folder that is organized by the file manager, and you can see the different folders. So we're going to be working in my private folder that has several subfolders and some private protocols here. And the first thing that I want to show is how you can bring into the platform existing digital protocols. So let me minimize. I'm going to stop sharing for a bit, and then I'm going to reshare. And I forgot to mention that at any moment, if you have questions, we will save some time at the end, but you can start typing at any moment in the Q&A window or of Zoom or in the chat. So as I mentioned before, what you see on the screen is my file manager, the file manager of my personal private workspace. And here to the right, you see my hard drive that contains some existing protocols in different formats. So I have a protocol as a Word document, Apple Pages, a PDF, and plain text. And the easier way for you to bring any document into the platform is just to take them and drag them. The platform doesn't only support protocols created with the editor, and we will touch on that a little bit later on, but you can bring Excel spreadsheets, PDFs, Word documents, and so on. So I'm going to open this folder, tips and tricks. There are already 2 protocols here, but if I want to bring these protocols, I can take them and just drag them. And now all my protocols have been centralized in a single platform, which will be accessible to all members of my workspace. I can also share these protocols beyond my workspace by clicking the protocol, right-clicking the protocol, and share it. So by typing the email address, I can send that PDF to any collaborator beyond my workspace. I can also share it with other workspaces by typing the workspace name in this window. However, because these protocols were created, because these are documents in their original format, these are not protocols. I cannot publish any of these documents. So if I select one of these existing protocols, you could see that I have a publish option because these 2 were protocols created with the editor. If I select any of these documents, I can share them, but I cannot publish them. Therefore, they cannot receive a DOI and they are not citable documents. The easiest way for you to create a publishable protocol out of any of these existing documents is to create an empty protocol and attach the existing protocol as an attachment. So I'm going to visit the editor. I'm going to select create a new protocol. And then I can add a title. In the description tab, I can add an abstract. And adding a title and an abstract will make the protocol more discoverable, both internally or if I decide to publish a protocol externally. And now the way that people traditionally write protocols is by typing steps. So step 1, step 2. There are also shortcuts. So instead of moving my hands between the keyboard and the mouse to select the new button, we also have shortcuts that allows you to insert new steps directly from the keyboard. But I already have my protocol as an existing digital file. So I'm going to open the Apple Pages protocol. So you can see the protocol has a title, an abstract, and then it has different sections, each of which contain a few steps. So the easiest way for me to make a publishable protocol out of this document will be to attach it. So rather than adding steps as I did here, I'm just going to revert. So I don't have any steps. In the description tab, at the very bottom, there is a place for me to add an attachment. So I can just drag and drop it, or I can browse. The easiest way for me is going to be to drag and drop. I can take my document, drop it, and now it has been attached. So the protocol has a title, has an abstract. It doesn't have steps, but the protocol itself is attached as a Apple Pages document. If I go to the viewer, again, there is a title, the abstract, and the attachment. Now, because this was a protocol created with the editor, it's now publishable. The same as I did before. This is the protocol. I can still share it, but now I can also publish it. And once I publish my protocol, it receives a DOI, and then I can cite it. However, if you are familiar with protocols.io, you know that our protocols are usually dynamic and interactive. They accept comments. They are written step by step, and you can run them from the computer or tablet. Because this protocol doesn't have a step, only an attachment, I cannot run it from the computer or tablet, and I don't see the specific steps to which potential users could add comments. So I'm going to show you a third way in which you can create these dynamic and interactive protocols from an existing document. It is a little bit more time consuming, but it gives you more rewards in terms of functionality. So I'm going to still work on the protocols, on this protocol, tips and tricks number 3. I'm going to go back to the editor. So I have the protocol as an attachment, but I'm going to create steps. So I'm going to reopen my test protocol that has sections and steps. And instead of retyping these steps here, what I'm going to select is insert steps from a text file, which is to your left. In my case, each number is a step. So I select each number is a step. I copy the steps that I want to import. Paste them here. And now they have been transformed from a text document into the steps of my editor. I can either take the name of the title, create a title, and then I can add a new section, go to section 2 of my protocol, and add the next 2 steps. There is a step 7 is empty, and I can delete that step. And now I have 2 sections with 8 steps total. I can view to the viewer. I can go to the viewer, and you will see that in addition to having the protocol as an attachment, now I have steps. And this makes the protocol both dynamic and interactive. So if I publish it, or even before publishing, my collaborators, those who have access to my protocol, can add comments. And I will be notified. It is publishable because it's a protocol created with the editor. It is equally shareable. And now I can also run it from the computer or tablet. So if this were a wet lab protocol, I can move through my protocol and save as I complete, as I make progress on my experiment. And let's say that if I made a mistake here, I can add a note to my run. And then eventually, once I finish my experiment, I can save that run as a independent file with a timestamp. If I go to my file manager, I can see the run of my experiment with all the comments that I added. In this case, it was a mistake on step 5. Now let's go back to the protocol that we created with the steps. And I want us to start working on components. Components allows you to give a lot of detail and a lot of structure to your protocol. And some of these components are really useful when running the protocol the way that I showed you before. So one component, for example, is the duration. So there is a 30-minute incubation here, which I can transform in a duration. Another duration here. Sorry. And you can also add, there is concentration, there is temperature, and so on. Now, the duration, let me undo this because I made a mistake. So it's 30 minutes. Now I see 30 minutes here, 10 minutes here. And the duration is important or is helpful because when I run my protocol, any duration becomes a real timer. So if I were to run my protocol again, you see that it adds a structure. Whenever there is a duration in any step, it actually becomes a real timer. So you can click the timer and the computer or tablet or phone will beep when the timer is over. And you can create durations for as many steps as you want. Half an hour here, 10 minutes here, 1 hour here, and so on. Now, I can also insert tables in my protocol. So I can create a table de novo. With reagent, A, B, C, volume, and I can do 10x. So 45, let's say this is volume in microliters, 45, 24, and 13. The tables accept formulas. So equals 10 times B2. And then I can just drag this and I create a table. I can also insert tables, pre-existing tables from Excel or Google Sheets. So I have a table here. This. I'm going to insert that table. So I can create an empty table, go to my table in Google Sheets or in Excel, take it. You will see that The same here. There are formulas on column C. I can take the content, copy it, paste it here, and the content of the table has been inserted. However, as you will see, the formulas were not copied from Google Sheets to my table, just the values. If I want the formulas to be copied, what I have to do is in Google Spreadsheets, I select View, Show, Formulas. Now I see the formulas. I can copy them again and paste them here. Now you see the values, but if you double click, you see that the formulas were copied. And that's a trick that not everybody knows. You can also, it's very easy to insert images or videos to any step. So I go to insert image or videos, and then I can search my documents for the image that I want to insert. But if my lab already has, let's say, a YouTube channel in which I post some of my protocol videos, you can also embed a video from YouTube or Vimeo. So to do that, rather than insert an image, you go to embed media, a window will open, and then you can take the YouTube video that you want to insert. So this is a video that explains how to load in agarose gel. You click share, you select embed, a code is gonna appear, you copy it, and in the protocol, you insert the code, you save it, and what you see is that the video, not only the link, but the video has been embedded, and you can play it. So you have embedded the video. There is another functionality that I want to show to you, which is called the smart component. So the smart component allows you to capture values during numerical values during a run. It looks like a table. So I'm going to search for it. And you can add rows. Let's say I'm running an experiment that requires me to count dead cells in a microscope field. So I have to count the number of total of cells, and then I have to count out of those how many were dead using a staining. So my first number that I need to capture is the total number of cells. And I'm going to select it as a required field. And then the second row will be the dead cells in that field, also required. As you see, it looks like a table. And this component is useful, again, when running the protocol and capturing numeric values. So if I go to the viewer, you will see that my protocol has the tables, the image, the video, and then eventually I reach the smart component. This is useful when running the protocol. I'm going to run it again. And I keep marking the steps are completed. However, when I reach step 5 that has a smart component, I cannot continue unless I enter the values because I selected those values to be required. So I count the total number of cells as 45 and the number of dead cells are 13. Now I can proceed. I finish my experiment. I save the run. with a timestamp. And if I open my run record, I will see that the values of that I captured during that experiment were saved. So you can always go back to your own records. And in a way, it operates as an electronic lab book. Any of these files is exportable. So I can select my protocol and I can export it as a PDF or to Dropbox, Google Drive, Box, and so on. We also have an integration with Lab Archives, but I won't touch on that today. But I can also export my run records, again, directly to the computer or to any of these cloud-based drives. Let's keep editing our protocol. And the last thing that I would like to mention about the editor is another functionality that is called step case. And the step case is useful when your protocol bifurcates. Let's say that you are doing a in situ hybridization, but the protocol changes slightly if you are working with lung tissue or with hard tissue. So, but you want to capture that information. So I can select a new step case, and then it will be in situ tissue. And then you can add a small description here. Add a step case. So you will see it here. And then you can start adding steps to that branch of the protocol. Long step 1, long step 2. And you want to capture in the same protocol information when you work with hard tissue. So you can add a second case in situ for hard tissue. Hard. So if you work with hard, at a step case, long has 3 steps, hard has 0, but I can start adding my steps for hard because they are different than the steps for long. And actually, my protocol is shorter for the hard. I only need 2 steps. And I can move back and forth between hard, and I can keep adding more tissues. If I go to the viewer, again, when I reach step 8, I can select the long with the long steps, or I can select the hard with the hard steps. And that also works during the run. So if I want to run my protocol, I can mark each step as done. And then when I reach the step 8, I can select, oh, right, I couldn't proceed because I need to enter the values here. And then when I reach step 8, I can select either long or hard and keep running my experiment, in this case with the hard. So that was the last thing that I wanted to show about the editor. And now let's talk about the file manager, and particularly about how to the differences between copy, version, and fork, and how to create collections. So any protocol is versionable, but versions are mostly restricted to the authors. If you are the author of a protocol, either public or private, you can create a new versions, and versions will sit on top of each other. So if a reader has a link for version 1, but a version 2 already exists, the reader will be notified that a newer version exists. It is very easy to create a version. You select the protocol and you select new version. And then you create your new version. We recommend using versioning when you want to clarify, correct, or improve an existing protocol, but you are still working with the same sample, the same equipment, on the same conditions. So if I look for a public protocol that has a few versions, in this case, this protocol has 2 versions. As I mentioned before, the versions sit on top of each other, and I can change between, as a reader, I can change between versions 1 or 2, and I can even compare the differences side by side between versions, and the platform immediately highlights the differences between version 1 and version 2. You can also copy your own protocols. And when you copy a existing protocol, the 2 copies will be independent of each other. We recommend using copying when you are creating templates that contain the metadata. So the 2 protocols are independent from each other. Their content is not related, but they share the metadata. So you can write a template that contains authors, affiliation, funding, generate multiple copies, and then you develop the copies, independent copies with the editor with different content. It is very easy to create a copy. You highlight the protocol or template, then you select copy or fork, and you create a copy rather than a fork. The fork, the content of the protocols are related, and the platform keeps a line of credit. With forking, you can fork your own protocols, but also any public protocol. So in principle, any public protocol, it's a template for you to optimize it for your own needs. Again, I can select any protocol that I want. Let's say this is a protocol that I think might work for me, but it might need some optimization for my own conditions. I can select copy and fork. I can make a fork. I'm going to select the folder in which to save this fork. I'm going to change the title just to make sure that this is my own copy or fork. And now I can go and edit the protocol to make it my own, because instead of 15 milliliters, I have to use 20 in this case. Now, if I go to the viewer, what I will see is that there is a flag that says that this protocol has been forked from a different public protocol, and this is the line of credit. If I were to publish my fork eventually, I will be the author, but it will be notified, so it will be published with this flag that says that the protocol was forked from an existing protocol. So I just forked a public protocol, but you can also fork your own private protocols. So let's say that we developed this protocol, and you can see here again that for this protocol, I have the flag that says that it was a fork. Now, this is the fork of a public protocol. All public protocols are forkable, but let's say that we developed this protocol to work in rats. But now I want to change some things to make it work in mice. So I can create a fork. And what you can see is that I created my fork, but now I can open it and change whatever I need to change in the protocol to make it work in mice rather than rats. And finally, let's talk about collections. So when you're putting together a paper, let's say, or you want to share a bunch of protocols with your colleagues, or a very long experiment needs several protocols, you can create a collection that will be a single document that is also publishable independently of each protocol. So to do that, I go to the new button, I create a new collection. I'm going to add a title to my collection. And then I can start searching for the protocols that I want to add to my collection. I can search public protocols, which I can add to my collection. And this protocol has been added, but I can also search my own private protocols. And I can add some of the protocols that we have created. So tips and tricks 1, tips and tricks 2. I'm going to add tips and tricks 3 for rats. You can see that I have added these protocols to my collection. I can reorder the protocols if they're, and then I can go to the viewer and I can see that my collection contains several protocols and I can preview any of my protocols independently. Right? And this collection is also publishable as an independent file that contains all these protocols. And the last two things I want to mention before we open the floor for questions is about how to collaborate. I briefly mentioned before that you can collaborate within or beyond your workspace. I'm going to reload so you can see the collection that we created. To collaborate within your workspace, you can invite people to join your workspace. To do so, any workspace that you create de novo, so if I click here, I will be creating a new workspace, but any workspace is private by default. You will have to actively make it public. To make public the protocol for it to be searchable, you go to the preferences, you go to advanced options, and then I can change the status from private to public. And once I select public, I can select how people can join. They will be able to find my workspace, but I can select how they can join. I can make it open to all by request or by invitation only. So if I were to search, let's say COVID, right now I'm seeing publications, but I can change it to workspace. I will see all public workspaces that have COVID as a keyword. If I'm not a member of that workspace, I don't have access to the private documents, but I have access to the profile of those workspaces. So I can open any of these public workspaces. In this case, I will need to request to join. The administrator will receive a notification saying that Gabriel Gasque wants to join, and they will have to allow it. But I can see all the publications associated with this workspace, the members and discussions, but I don't have access to the file manager. If I want to see the file manager, I will have to request to join and be a member. So going back to my private workspace, if I want to invite collaborators to this private workspace, I select the administration menu, members, and now I can invite people by typing their email address. Once they join my workspace, they will have access to all my private content. Everything that you see here will be accessible to all members, with the exception of the documents that I save in my own private folder, which is called, it will have your name and the logo raccoon. What I save here, it's only me who can see it. And I will have to move it to the general folders for my collaborators to have access to it. In addition to bringing people to my workspace, I can also collaborate beyond the workspace by sharing specific files. To do so, and I briefly showed that to you before, you can select any document, click share, and then I can send this document to people beyond my workspace by typing their email address. Once I add a collaborator, I can control what they can do with that document. In this case, I have shared this document with 4 people who are not members of my workspace, with Lenny, Nastia, Emma, and Daniel. And in this case, Lenny and Emma can edit my protocol, but Nastia and Daniel can only view it. I can also get a shareable link that I can share via Slack or WhatsApp or email that will be access to that person to my protocol in view-only mode. And I can also share my protocol with a whole other workspace of which I am member of. So by typing the name of the workspace here, I can send this protocol to a different workspace. So with that, I will stop. I know that I share a lot of information. I will be sharing the recording so you can use it as a reference, but I will be happy to take any questions. And I see that there are a few in the chat. Let me see. I will start reading. So Young Hong asks, if there is a 2 ways to complete a step 2, how do you add in the protocol? So there are probably more than one answer to that question. So one way, if there are 2 potential ways to solve it, you can do that with the step case. So as I showed you before, let me go back to the editor here. So this is a protocol that we created that has a step case for long and hard, but instead of calling it long and hard, you can call it, option 1 and option 2. And the steps, you just edit the step to make it clear that it is just 2 different options. Another way will be by adding a note, for example. You can go here, go to the component, add a note, and then in a step 6, you can say, but you can also do X, Y, and Z. So this is the most common way to do a step 6, but there is an alternative. So you can use nodes or you can use step cases. Let me know, Young Hong, if I responded to your question. And I see that there are some others in the chat. So Hayden asked, if you have figures that go with the steps, how can you upload them under the appropriate number while doing the insert steps from the text? So you will select the step. In this case, we inserted the figure or the image in a step 3. But if you want to insert it on the step 7, you just select the figure, select the step, go to insert, image, and then I am inserting it now in step 7. If I made a mistake, I can select the figure. Sorry. Step 7, I can highlight the figure and I can delete it. And then if I made a mistake. Did I answer your question, Hayden? So Joan asks, once you have a final version of the protocol, is there a time when you can lock it down and no one can add any more comments to it? The way to do it will be to publish it. If you publish a protocol, once it receives a DOI, it becomes persistent. So you cannot make any edits any longer. However, if you don't want to publish your protocol, what you can do, and let me go back, in the editor, there is a history where you can see, sorry. So this is the editor. There is a history that will show you all the changes that have been made. So even though you are not locking it, you can see if any new changes have been made to the protocol. And as you select them, you start like undoing them. So you can undo the changes if anybody touched your protocol and you didn't want them to touch it. But once you publish a protocol, it becomes fixed. Let me know, Joanne, if I answer your question. So Hayden also asks, also, can you set up sub-steps? So A, if you have this, or B, if you have that, depending on the condition. So you can add sub-steps, but if it's an if, I will recommend probably a step case. But the way to add sub-steps, I'm going to add it in step 3. You go to step 3. Remove this. And then, oh, it's too big. Let me. So in step 3, I should be able to add a substep. So how do I add a substep? So in step 3, I can insert a substep that is going to be called step 3.1. But again, if it's a conditional, I will use the step case as I show you here. So in this case, it is option 1 and option 2. So you can edit. And as I said, if you X, then Y, save. And in option 2, I can edit. If you W, then Z. And those are conditional. So when you do sub-steps, can you do it from the insert steps from text? I'm not sure I'm understanding your question, but you can insert sub-steps, and let's do that with 7 from here. So you can insert a sub-step, but also from here. So you can, if you do Command Shift 7, you will be inserting sub-steps with your keyboard rather than with your mouse. Let me know, Hayden, if this was your question. So Sylvain asks, at the end of a step case, is there a way to go back? So there's no way to go back, but let's say that you have option 1, option 2, And the initial steps are different between the options, but you need them to converge again and go back. So what you can do is you can add a new step. Now this is common step 1, common step 2, and so on. You can select the steps, copy, and insert them now in, let me just stand here. So I inserted them. So I copied them from one branch and I pasted them in the other. And you can see that they're long step, common 1, common 2, hard, common 1, common 2. Did I answer your question, Sylvain? Then what can we do with a JSON export of a protocol? Is there a JSON import? No, there is no JSON import, but you can export with JSON to copy all the steps and the metadata. So Young Hong says, how to assign an admin who can import protocols for several collaborators. So if I go to my workspace, in the administrator setting, in file access setting, you can control again. So I select my workspace, administration, file access setting. You can control who can do what with the content of a workspace. So for example, I am allowing sharing file with people outside my workspace, but I can unclick it and then nobody can share outside my workspace. In this case, I only allow admins to publish, but I can allow anyone to publish, or I can allow no one to publish. So it's very tailored. And option 1, if I go to members, I can see this workspace has only 2 members. And then what I can do is I can reassign certain members or add as admins, even as an owner or just as a member. Did I answer your question, Young Hong? Another question. Is it possible to create protocols via an API? Our API, I might not be able to answer this question precisely, but I will get back to you, Sylvain, if you leave me your email address in the chat. But we have a public API. So if you know coding and you can and you will have access to the API. So you might be able to create protocol via the API because it is public. Young Hong asked, in the protocol, can you generate a figured list or a table list? So, as I mentioned before, you can create a table with numerical or textual content. You can bring a table from Excel or Google Spreadsheet. But let's here in sub-step 3.3, we can create a list. So 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4. So you can create a list or a table, and then you cannot insert images within the cells of a table, but you can create a list of figures. So Hayden asks, can you use the button from the insert step from text button? Can you use the button? I'm not sure that I'm understanding your question, but let's say that I want to insert. So if you want to insert steps from a text file, the way that we build this protocol initially, you can do it from here, not from here, but you can insert the steps by selecting it here. And then when you are making a sub step, can you utilize the insert a step from text button? So that's a good question. We inserted, do you remember? Let's create a new protocol. I think that I understand what you're asking. So I'm going to create a new protocol. Then I'm going to insert that. But now you realize that this step 2, is actually a sub-step. So you can select step 2 and let me see how you do this. Oh, sorry. So what you can do is you can probably copy the text, insert a sub-step, and then, sorry, insert a sub-step here and copy the text, and then you can delete these two, sorry. So you will have to copy the text and create a sub-step for step 1, for example. Let me know if I answer your question, Hayden. So how to publish a clean protocol after revising the original protocol based on comments from collaboration? Where do you add your co-author list generally? So if collaborators are adding comments to your protocol, I added a comment here, and this is a public protocol. This is a private protocol. So I'm going to go to the view. I see that there is a comment. When I go to publish, right? So I need to add an abstract, and then I keep going. Here is a step to add authors and funders. And that's also part of your question, Jong Hong. It is while you are publishing that you add authors to the protocol. So I'm going to just add myself as an author. And then I don't have any funding. And then at this step, if there are comments that were made while your protocol was private, you can discard all the comments that were made. And when the protocol is published, it will be stripped down of all the comments and discussions associated with the private protocol. So it will be, when it's published, it will be clean. We are running overtime. I'm happy to stay and keep answering questions. But if you have to go, you're free to go, obviously. So Young Hong asked whether you can assign multiple admins for a collaboration. Yes. So as you will see, in this case, I am the owner because I created the workspace, but I can make my alter ego in Gmail also an admin. And you can have more than one admin. There is only one owner, but you can have multiple admins in a workspace. And I think that was the last question. If I didn't respond correctly to any of your questions, uh, that's a good question, Young Hong. The last one. If you publish a protocol and you publish it without the comments, whether you will still have access to the comments, I don't know. I have to get back to you on that one. Okay? So I will investigate and send you uh, a email. So let me see. And then for Sylvain, he wants to know if you can create protocols with the API. Is that correct? Okay, so if any of my questions, sorry, again, if any of my answers were not satisfactory, please retype them here and I will get back to you via email. So Young Hong, I will tell you about the comments, the private comments in a published protocol. And Sylvain, I will tell you about creating protocols with the API. Anything else that I need to email about? Okay, so if there are no more questions or lingering comments, we will stop the presentation now. I will be sending the recording to all registered